Now that we spoke about regulations, CBDCs, the institutional side of the industry, as well as the possible outcome of all developments, we will conclude the virtual day by going into the third block, the use cases. We'll start with Alex Peck, Ken Seif, and Rob Schmoltz, who will talk about BitCloud, what it is, what it could be in the future, and what this means for our businesses. So Rob, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, Nicolo. I'm going to ask the other panelists, or the two panelists, to introduce themselves in just a minute. I'm excited to have both of them here to talk about BitCloud. As for me, full disclosure, this is my fourth day as a general partner with Blockchain Ventures, an early stage venture firm geared to invest in the biggest outcomes and ideas in the blockchain. Blockchain has early round investments in a number of leading protocols, including Polkadot, Solana, Figure, Flow, Filecoin, and full disclosure, BitCloud, among many others. I definitely won't pretend to know nearly as much as the panelists about today's topic, which I guess therefore it's fitting that I'm just a moderator. But certainly I think I, as many others, were struck by some of the implications and potential outcomes that might arise from BitCloud when it first emerged. But let's save that for Ken and Alex, who I'm sure will get into that. Alex, why don't you first introduce yourself? Ken, I'll ask you to do the same, and then we can dive right in.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here. I'm a crypto investor and founder of some companies in the space. So currently I manage and started an early stage crypto venture fund. We've invested all over DeFi, centralized crypto businesses around the world, infrastructure, and then also next gen sort of frontier areas of crypto, such as decentralized social networks. And I'm also one of the earliest BitCloud investors. And previously I was an investor with Bain Capital Ventures and AngelList, and I co-founded a crypto venture firm in Asia and the US called Dragonfly Capital, as well as an investment bank called Imperi Partners, among other things.
Great. Ken?
My name is Ken Seif. I'm Rob's partner at Blockchain Ventures. As he mentioned, we like to be in the early rounds of the biggest outcomes of the blockchain. We think they have a lot in common with the biggest outcomes from the internet era. So we use some filters that were developed around the internet big outcomes to apply to identify companies. BitCloud is certainly one of the ones we think is most promising in the space. It's super early. This is our third fund. We have about $1 billion under management now, and I've been part-time in the crypto space since early 2013 and full-time since January of 2017.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, guys. So let's dive right in, as I said at the top. Let me start with a very basic and maybe foundational question. And Ken, maybe I'll start with you, which is, what exactly is BitCloud?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Let's first step back and say one of the reasons we picked BitCloud was to share something new that the blockchain can do that couldn't be done before this. So this is representative of the kinds of absolutely massive and monster transformations and changes and innovations that are going to take place on the blockchain or because of the blockchain. And oftentimes new technologies don't fully reveal themselves when you first see them. And that's true with both the blockchain and I believe with BitCloud as well. At first glance, but BitCloud is simply a social network like Twitter. Creators can post, their audience can like what they post, but there's a couple of fairly substantive differences. The first is the platform's actually owned by the creators and their audiences. There's no such thing as a centralized party, so it's decentralized. And the economics of that are pretty profound. The way it works is that each person who is a creator on the platform or a user on the platform, even audience members, has a token. So Pamela Anderson has the Pamela Anderson token, and Naval has the Naval token, and Chamath has the Chamath token. And these tokens can be bought and sold, and they can be bought and sold on a bonding curve. So if you're the first person to buy Pamela Anderson's token or Elon Musk's token, it's much less expensive than if you buy the 5th or 8th token. And tokens start in the pennies. And because of the bonding curve, the 1,000th token costs around $500,000. And you can buy fractions of a token. But what that does is it creates this massive alignment between the creator, their audience, the people who discover them, and the people who build their audience for them. And in the traditional world, all of the money is made by advertising and goes to the centralized social network like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Here, there is no such thing as advertising, and the concept is actually quite different. If I'm an influencer and I have a large audience and I want to share Rob, who I think is super talented and he doesn't have a large audience, I have the opportunity to buy Rob's coin before he has a big audience. And if I'm buying at the lower end of the bonding curve, I may pay dollars or tens of dollars for a coin. And if my audience is large and makes Rob's audience large and they start to buy Rob's coin, our economics are totally aligned. So I don't, as an influencer, need to go out and find a sponsor who's willing to pay me like I would on Facebook or Instagram, where there might not be alignment between their brand and my point of view. Here, there's total alignment. I can promote, I can introduce, I can write about, I can share the content of anybody, and to the extent I want to have economic alignment with them, I can simply participate by buying their coin. Every time I buy their coin, they earn tokens in the platform. So the more people that buy their coin, the larger the holder they are. So in theory, the most influential people and most followed people on the platform will likely be the ones who own the most of the platform. I'm sure there's a lot more to add here because that's actually only the first part of the business, and we can probably talk about the second part as we get deeper into this conversation.
Yeah, let me pivot to Alex then. Alex, well, first off, I might have a follow-up question for you, but before I do that, anything Ken left out or something you'd want to add, append, modify?
No, I think that was great. I mean, the key thing to realize about BitClout is it's a new type of social network, and it mixes sort of speculation and financialization with social media, as Ken pointed out a lot of examples. But it's also its own blockchain, right? It's a layer 1 blockchain, similar to Bitcoin or Ethereum. It has a totally open backend, and so things that you would not assume are the case when you're talking about Twitter or something are like totally like, so for instance, like open APIs, full programmability, the analytics, the data, everything on the platform is totally open, is totally transparent, can be remixed, new front ends can be made. And so it's the sort of confluence of these two things, right, is what makes it so special and unique.
Well, maybe then my follow-up is just to ask you to keep building on that. So, as Ken pointed out, BitClout is the combination of decentralization with social networking. And Ken, I know I'm oversimplifying, but just for humor me with that. And then Alex, you layered on the fact that, yeah, but it's got this open back end as well. Why is that something you get excited about? Maybe develop that thought a little further, because I think there's probably a lot there.
Yeah, I'll back up a little bit too, and I think it's important to frame it in like where we are in the crypto story. In many ways, I think the way to think about crypto is we're really the second stage of the internet. We're bringing value online. We're adding this sort of new layer to the digital world that financializes things. It turns things into assets and tokens that otherwise wouldn't be. It sort of creates incentive layers and markets in areas of the economy that wouldn't already exist. And it has profound impacts. But really the thing that that Ken and I have been investing in for the last 5 or 6 years is mostly infrastructure that supports this. So we invested in Ethereum and Filecoin, and you guys are one of the biggest Polkadot backers. And then we've invested in many early infrastructure, almost like middleware projects, like DeFi, for instance, decentralized finance, which you guys you've probably heard about before in this conference. But in many ways, these are like core infrastructure and middleware layers, right? So like Ethereum is a way to do decentralized compute and Filecoin is storage, and compound finance is a way to do lending markets and there's decentralized exchanges, and there's ways to create new assets. And these can be used directly, but they can also be integrated or embedded into other applications and parts of the digital economy. And the third wave of crypto, which is where we are today, and BitClout is sort of the firing gun of this, is like, how do we financialize and how do we cryptoify entirely new parts of the digital economy? And social media is a great example of it. Social media is obviously the biggest. It's like one of the very largest markets in the entire world. You know, most of the Fortune 10, right? The Fortune 10 or 20 are, at least by market cap, are social media companies. And they're incredible monopolies. Like they're some of the largest companies and most influential companies that have ever existed on Earth, like in the history of Earth. And they're so powerful, things like Twitter and Facebook and Google, that they're probably more powerful by like standard political science terms than and metrics than like most nation states are. And they're probably more powerful than like the Roman Empire was in many ways. And as a consequence, they control public discourse. They have total monopolies over what they do. They cut off like third-party development. You can't access your data. The users are sort of like wage slave, like the creators on these social media platforms are like wage slaves. They're like the proletariats of the 19th century. They can't unionize. They get paid pennies.
You're a fan, is what you're saying.
I love it. Yeah, no. So you see this, and honestly, even the creators and the early investors of these, you know, we're like, I'm too young to be an early investor in Twitter or whatever, but like the founder of Twitter and all the early investors are like, have deep concerns over what they've built, right? And that's why like Jack Dorsey went on stage a week or two ago in Miami and was like, if like I didn't have to do Twitter full time, probably be working on Bitcoin.
So Alex, is this maybe an opportunity to sort of undo the sins of the past and get it right going forward?
I think so. I think there's deep. I mean, we could psychoanalyze like sort of sins of the past thing. The thing that's interesting to me though is really, I think everyone agrees that like we goofed, like we messed up a little bit on the way here. But the problem is, and the reason for this problem is they have massive, massive network effects, right? So traditionally in venture, like there's this refrain that's like, if you want to beat an incumbent, you probably have to be like 10 times better, right? Like on the product, and you have to offer a much better experience. In social networks, you have to be like 100 times better because you have to convince 1 billion people to move from like Twitter to a new platform, right? And so what blockchain does, and what we've been building towards these last decade or so with Bitcoin and new monies and then new infrastructure, is it creates like all these new use cases and value propositions when you mix blockchain with a social network that I think it's enough. I think it's like 50 to 100 times better across multiple dimensions that we could talk about creator monetization, owning your own data, things like that, that can finally sort of like create enough momentum to innovate and disrupt the incumbents in this space.
Let me grab that point and flip it back to Ken, because I think it's a really important one. And Ken, it reminds me of something I've read and heard you say in the past around BitClout isn't so much like a new social community, but a social economy, which I think is what I'm hearing Alex say. And maybe you'd care to elaborate a little bit on that. I do have a couple more questions I want to get to before time. So love to hear your thoughts on define the social economy, and then let me take you in a couple different directions.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. In short, what I mean by that is I think in some ways the social network aspect of BitClout is actually a Trojan horse. It's real in the sense that it is a decentralized social network. It's impactful in the sense that no one company controls it, and consequently anybody can build on it, anybody can censor it or uncensor it or take pieces of it. But actually, I think one of the biggest things and the biggest parts of BitClout are the creator coins. And because it's decentralized, you're going to be able to unpack the creator coins and distinguish them and separate them from the social network. And those creator coins will live on their own outside of the social network. And when that happens, what you've done is you've created a protocol that's a derivative on human influence. And this is a really human influence, human productivity, And this is a incredibly potent, incredibly potent new technology. We don't even know where this is going to go, but you know, imagine if you went into McDonald's and you had this incredible server who, instead of tipping them, you bought their social coin. You then begin to participate in their future. Or you went to Baskin and Robbins and there was a student there who served you, and instead of tipping them, you bought their token. If you had been really lucky and done it at the right moment in history, Barack Obama worked at McDonald's and Jeff Bezos worked at Baskin and Robbins, or vice versa. I can't remember which was which. You could have had a derivative on their future income and net worth. And in fact, you could have been powerful in the careers of content producers by buying their tokens and sharing them if you had an audience.
Like a band or an artist or what have you.
That's right. And so the ordinary person has the opportunity now to not only become an influencer, but to directly make money off of it and to directly and favorably and positively impact the careers of real talent that might otherwise go unnoticed.
Right, because they get to participate in the upside as well. It's not just you. Well, you know, Alex, I heard you say something at the beginning I want to go back to, which is, you know, you're struck by how this is kind of a different type of application, a different stage in the value chain. How's that showing up in the kind of community that's assembling around this, right? Because it feels like, based on the little bit of time I've spent on it, that it's a different group of people than maybe what we're used to see with protocols and projects.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about all of these things we invest in is they morph the concept of infrastructure and application, and they sort of blend them together. So, you know, DeFi products are used by hundreds of thousands of people, but ultimately they probably won't be used by billions of people directly. They're still kind of clunky. It'll be like a lot of what we invest in is sort of like Linux in a way. Like Linux is used directly by millions of people, but it's used indirectly by everyone on Earth, you know? And so we see that, but over time, as we get into sort of more like consumer-facing parts of the digital economy, it becomes more and more user-friendly. And so BitClout is definitely an evolution. So actually, there's two things to talk about with the BitClout community. One, it's one of the most popular decentralized applications in all of crypto in terms of the number of people who are like interacting with interacting with the blockchain every day. It's probably number 2, maybe number 3. Behind like Uniswap, and the people.
Not to interrupt, but I just did. And the whole dynamic of interacting too is it's designed for non-blockchain experts, non-technical talent. I think in a way that we haven't seen in a lot of cases. But sorry, yeah. Keep going. I shouldn't have cut you off.
No, yeah, and they're users that have almost rarely used crypto before, and they're the users you want. They're like the long tail of people that have been beaten down and marginalized, and their content has been censored, and they haven't been able to monetize on social media platforms before, like in long tail Instagram influencers and things like that. And then the second category too. Ken actually probably can speak to the first category even better than me, but the second category too is the developer ecosystem, because the other like category of user that Twitter and Facebook and so forth have completely censored, like it's not Trump, well, kind of, it's developers. Like developers have no rights whatsoever. They've been completely banned and ostracized from the centralized platforms. So it's been like a couple months maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of building as they go in the open. And there's like over 100 projects that are building, like developer teams that are building on top of BitClout. Ken and I, we've backed a few of these already. And they're doing block explorers, they're doing data analytic, like brokerage layers, like SaaS tools, pretty much the whole spectrum of things you can invest in. Is like
so interesting.
Yeah, are being built on top of BitClout.
It's so busy with activity on the developer side that actually recently someone built an application just to track all of the activity of the developers and all of the projects that are being built, a product hunt, so to speak, for BitClout. And as Alex mentioned, we're probably 90 days into this company. and there are 100 companies already building on top of the platform. It's also, with tens of thousands or low hundreds of thousands of users, depending on what period you measure over and how you qualify a user, it's already generating a lot of money for the creators on the platform. There are hundreds of people who in 90 days have made over $50,000, and that is not from token appreciation. If you count that in, there are many, many millionaires that have already been built out of the BitClout ecosystem. We may not even be in the first inning of BitClout. We may be still getting the batting lineup in order to overuse that analogy. And so I can't remember, even in the early days of Facebook, I don't think that there was this same amount of passion and ownership by the community of users, and certainly not in the community of developers and businesses being built on it. I think we're witnessing something very profound here, and probably if it goes to its ultimate conclusion, could be one of the biggest outcomes in the blockchain. And I think that's what's so exciting here. I won't speak for Alex, but we continue to deploy money into this platform, both into the ecosystem, because we think that some really big companies are going to be built on it, but also into the token itself.
So you guys may have both answered this already, but certainly there's been plenty of detractors, naysayers, et cetera, right? And I think some of you can go on so far as to say that BitClout is, a scam. And yet, I think anyone listening to this panel would clearly say, hey, these guys have conviction around this. And as you both have disclosed, you have investments not only in BitClout, but increasingly in people using the kind of back end and the development capability that Alex talked about. So how do you reconcile that, or have you already? Do you feel like what you've already shared is enough to say, guys, it's not a scam? And maybe Alex, I'll start with you, and then Ken, if there's anything you want to add, and then I think Nicola's going to come back on.
Yeah, I think there's two concepts that BitClout has embraced as a sort of team and project that are kind of controversial in crypto. Concept one is concept of progressive decentralization, where you sort of build in public and you start a little bit more centralized, and then you do a more open sourcing and things like that over time. And then two, the classic Facebook line, move fast and break things. Now, these concepts are both extremely important to do if you're a startup and you want to build a high growth product that will be used by millions or billions of people over a couple of years. But many people in crypto, like maybe the non-Silicon Valley part of crypto, are nervous about them, because crypto is like, you're always exchanging value. You're creating like a value experiment, right? So there's more on the line than usual if something breaks in your product. And crypto is anonymous and it's global. So there are just many scams in the space. And something that is a scam and that is like a venture, like is a startup, like is doing startup mentality stuff, progressive decentralization, moving fast and breaking things, they can look sort of similar, right? So people in crypto are very aware, like sensitive to this, and they think it's a good service to try to call out projects that look like it could be problematic. I mean, this happens with all the great innovations. Like literally, I've been in crypto since like 2014, before Ethereum launched. And for like 3 or 4 straight years, most people, it was kind of in vogue to say that Ethereum was a scam, because there were all these things and it was sort of centralized at first. So I think that's something that always happens in the space when there's something fast moving and innovative enough. Most of this, though, the thing about the other side of moving fast and breaking things is that you're doing all this stuff in public, right? So when BitClout launched, it was not really open source. It was mostly closed source. Now it's 100% open source, which no social media company has ever been. Like they've even innovated on like very wonky backend stuff, like the identity layer, which is one of the coolest parts about BitClout. It's almost like, to Ken's point, it's like this social reputation thing that you can take with you from BitClout to other platforms and anywhere. That's been like innovated on radically just in the last month or two. So all of it's happening in public. Anyone can track it. And I think as more people look at it, they'll be like, wow, this is actually like moving fast towards the ideal of what crypto projects should be at scale and over time.
And if you just to build on that, if you really want to be decentralized, one of the great models for that is Bitcoin, which had an anonymous founder or founders. And the founder of BitClout has chosen to be pseudo-anonymous. And in doing so, he's given up the opportunity to speak back and explain and share why it's not a scam or a fraud. And so that's created a one-directional conversation where people can shout whatever they want to shout, and it's up to the community to respond. And it's taken the community a little bit of time to get itself together. And some of the answers simply required the platform to launch new features. Like there was an argument early on, it was a scam because you could only buy it and not sell it. But this week, the token listed on blockchain.com. And yesterday, I think I saw that Coinbase is starting to show the price of the token. And earlier in the week and in the months before, it was revealed that not only did Alex and I invest in the early round of this, but Sequoia and Andreessen Horowitz and a number of even higher profile investors have publicly acknowledged being an early investor in this. So I think over time, the information's coming out, and I think it's very clear. Look, this is an experiment. It may or it may not work. If it does work, it could change the face of not just social media, but compensation, and it could actually be an alternative to online advertising. It could literally be a second revenue channel for the internet, which didn't exist before the blockchain.
All right, so guys, yeah, no, I'm going to hand him the gavel. That was super interesting. So thanks to you both, and Nicolo, I'll turn these guys over to your capable hands.
Thank you very much. So thank you for the discussion also, Ken and Alex. So I have here some questions. I think you hit really something with BitClout. So I would just take one or two, and then afterwards I would ask you to join the networking room so that people can also ask the questions to you. So just the example with Barack Obama, Ken, a question: why would such Obama token rise in value? How would the monetization process work? Just to get a better understanding.
Yeah. So in that particular case, he would have signed up for an account and he would have a token. And I mean, tipping could literally happen this way in the world where if you chose to, beyond just giving $2, you might decide to take a stake in that person. And but in doing so, you could be building equity for that person. So imagine I wanted to tip $2, and so I bought $20 of his token because 10% of his token would go to him as a founder reward. So he'd still end up with $2. I'd own $18 worth of tokens. And then Rob did it, and you did it, and Alex did it, and a whole bunch of people over the next 40 years bought it, and 1,000 of his coins had been purchased. The next person who's buying $20 worth of the coin is doing it with a coin that's worth $500,000. And so they're buying a small piece of the coin, but he's getting 10% of that in BitClout each time. And so as the value of the BitClout platform goes up, and he may have chosen to buy his own coins early for $1 or $10 or $15. So he might hold 40 or 50 of his coins that are now worth $500,000 each, and he's built real equity in addition to the BitClout he's earned. And we're talking about going from thousands or tens of thousands of users to potentially billions of users for social tokens around the world. These coins won't be trading, the big ones won't be trading for tens of thousands of dollars. They'll be trading for millions of dollars in the future.
Good. Thank you very much. I think so the question that I see here on my screen that people ask needs also some attention from your side in the networking room. So I would ask you now to join the networking room just to continue also the conversation, because I think it was really interesting and there are still a lot of things to discuss. So thank you very much, Rob, Alex, and Ken, for being with us here. And hopefully see you soon, and also maybe in St. Moritz in 2022.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.